I think we need to have a motion to reconsider. Commissioner Doyle has identified an issue with specifically the opt-out proposal that we just voted on. So I'm going to turn the tables on, or ask her to walk us through it and make a suggestion about how we deal with the issue that she's identified. Commissioner Doyle?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I am going to ask that we reconsider the opt-out provision because in my consideration of the best way to do this, I had forgotten a portion of 94G Section 3 that says, regardless of whether you are a yes or no community, after December 31st, 2019, if you prohibit a kind of marijuana establishment, which opting out could be interpreted to do, then you have to go through a ballot procedure. And so I think we may need to do this by opt-in to avoid that problem, because it, I think that's overly burdensome on communities to say you have to go through an election process.
First of all, thank you for catching this. I will never cease to be amazed by the complexity of municipal law, but so you're specifically just saying that the only thing we need to do is just change the language about opting out to opting in.
Yeah, I don't know if it's as simple as that,
I understand that.
To avoid that issue with the danger of it being deemed a prohibition of an establishment operating in a community, I do think the easier way to get to that issue is to allow them to opt in with the same sort of limitations that we put before, right, that the opting in should be done by ordinance or bylaw or regulation.
Okay. Thanks. Any comments, Commissioner Tuttle?
I don't think I've found that section yet, but I'm confused about interpreting marijuana establishments or conflating marijuana establishments with allowing delivery to your residence. It seems like those are two entirely separate issues.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, is it okay if I respond?
Please.
Yeah. I'm sympathetic to what you're saying, and it's the language, and I can read it if that's helpful, because
please
what
do.
it's 94G Section 3A2 subsection 1. I apologize that that's so long. And it essentially says, limit the number of marijuana establishments in the city or town, provided, however, that in the case of a city or town in which the majority of voters voted in the affirmative for question 4 on the 2016 state election ballot entitled Legalization, Regulation, and Taxation of Marijuana, and after December 31st, 2019, in the case of any other city or town, the city or town shall submit any bylaw or ordinance for approval to the voters pursuant to the procedure in subsection E, which is the one that calls for the ballot procedure, before adopting the bylaw or ordinance if it would prohibit the operation of one or more types of marijuana establishments within the city or town. And it's the operation that's given.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not being a lawyer, but that does sound pretty clear, unfortunately. Any other comments? I mean, I'm going to ask you for a motion, please, Commissioner Doyle, but let me first make sure that Commissioner McBride.
I just think we need to make a motion to reconsider and then a motion on the language.
Yep.
I'll make that motion to reconsider.
Wait, first, let me just make sure there are no other comments first. Okay, then please do make a motion to reconsider.
I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the Commission's prior vote regarding opting out of delivery.
Thank you. Let the record show that Commissioner Doyle made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the motion to reconsider. Then, if you are comfortable, Commissioner Doyle, could you make a motion around the reconsideration?
Sure. I'm not going to attempt particular language
Please
this
don't.
time,
Yeah,
and
just-
I'll just deal with concept.
Yep, thank you.
I move that municipalities that do not fall in the other two categories authorized to receive delivery be permitted to opt in through bylaw, ordinance, or regulation to authorize delivery within their borders.
Thank you. Before I ask, well, can I get a second on that motion? Second. Okay, thank you. Then can I ask all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Commissioner Title?
Abstain.
So let the record show that the motion was approved by a vote of 3 in favor, Commissioners McBride, Doyle, and Hoffman, 1 opposed, Commissioner Flanagan, and Commissioner Title abstained. Thank you, and I'm grateful, Commissioner, what's your name, Doyle? Commissioner Doyle, thank you for catching this. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's continue on, and several people came up to me during the lunch break and asked where we were going to get to by the end of the day and what was going to be on, what was not going to be on. I'm really sorry, I don't know. We're going to go till 5 o'clock or maybe shortly before, based upon a good breaking point. I'm just not sure where we're going to get to. I am 100% certain, however, at this point in time, we are going to have to meet tomorrow. We are certainly not going to get through the entire agenda today, but where exactly we're going to break, I'm sorry, I just cannot predict. That being said, let's keep going. Next section is .150, edible marijuana products. Are there any questions, comments, suggestions? Okay. .160, testing of marijuana and marijuana products. .170, municipal requirements. My favorite section, .200, counties of Dukes County and Nantucket. .300, complaints process. .301, inspections and compliance. .302, compliance examination. .303, unannounced purchase for the purpose of investigative testing, i.e. the secret shopper program. .310, deficiency statements. .320, plans of correction. .321, administrative hold. .330, limitation of sales. .335, removal and prohibition of marijuana and marijuana products. .340, quarantine order. .350, cease and desist order and summary suspension order. .360, fines. .370, order to show cause. .400, marijuana establishments, grounds for denial of application for licensure. .415, void marijuana establishment license. .450, marijuana establishment license, grounds for suspension, revocation, and denial of renewal applications. .500, hearings and appeals of actions on licenses. .800, background check suitability standard for licensure and registration.
Yes.
Commissioner Title?
So under Table B,
I'm sorry, it's under Table B?
under Table B on page 138.
Okay. I think we're in this, we're not there yet, I don't think.
Oh,
I think you're talking about .801.
okay, sorry.
No, I just want to make sure I'm following. So I think we're right now just making sure that there are no issues on .800.
Okay.
Are there any issues on .800, which is background check suitability standard for licensure and registration? Okay. Then let's move on. .801, suitability standard for licensure. I believe that is where your section is in, Commissioner Title. This section you would like to discuss?
Sorry, mine's actually in 802.
Oh, 802, okay, fine. So 801, any issues on, this is suitability standard for licensure? Okay, then .802, suitability standard for registration as a marijuana establishment agent. Commissioner Title?
Okay, so page 138, under quaffs for crimes of violence and fraud, presumptive negative suitability determination for preceding 7 years. So my comment is procedural, or my objection to this is procedural. So there are 2 instances where previously, for the past year to 2 years, we did not have a presumptive negative suitability determination for these 2 tables, Table D and Table D, for these quaffs. Now we do, in this draft, it was added. So we are taking away a right from this group of people who do not have a criminal conviction. I did not see any public comment that would call for this additional exclusion. To my knowledge, it did not come from a commissioner. And in my conversations with staff, there was not a specific reason that emerged as a basis for why this new category of exclusions was added. So therefore, unless anyone else wants to articulate a reason for why this new exclusion is necessary, I would move to reject this change in the regulations.
So you're talking about in two tables, not just, can you just be explicit about the tables that you're asking for that change?
Table B and Table D, like boy and dog.
I'm sorry? What's the last
B
one?
and D,
And it's specifically the quaff for crimes of violence, fraud?
yes.
Would anybody care to address that issue? First commissioners, and then obviously if any staff has a comment. But Commissioner Doyle?
Yeah, could we just get an idea of where it came from, the change?
General Counsel, do you have perspective on that?
Sure, I'd be happy to address that and also include Paul Payer in that conversation. In this round of the draft in this round of draft regulatory changes, there was an effort to look at the suitability tables to try to make them more consistent with the actual process that we've been following in terms of suitability determinations. In that conversation, I know that there was extensive discussion about quaffs and the frequency of quaffs that emerge in basically in practice. And oftentimes, basically prosecutors decide for various reasons to not pursue the conviction through a trial process, and then it results in a quaff. My understanding, and I'll defer to licensing enforcement on this, is my understanding is that in practice they are getting some of these reports from our background check folks and basically tracking those down. So in terms of public safety implications, I would defer to them to explain whether it has implications.
Okay, thank you very much, General Counsel. Enforcement Counsel? Oh, you're still there. You just changed chairs on me.
I did a bit earlier. Laptop battery had run its useful point. I likewise am not certain of the origin. In reviewing the drafts, I do see that at one point it was consistent with the existing regulations in that that particular offense was not included in B or D. So just to make that point initially, but to General Counsel's question regarding the public safety impact, under the proposed regulations, an additional category that's included in each of the tables would allow for a negative suitability determination based on prior acts. So by removing, if it were the Commission's determination, to remove from Table B and D the quaff offense for violence and fraud, I believe it's enforcement's opinion that that would not negatively impact public safety because the Commission would still have the capacity to review suitability matters in instances where there are multiple prior acts that may have resulted in a quaff, but in truly exceptional cases and not as a matter of a regular, routine, automatic, presumptive determination.
Are there other, thank you for that, both General Counsel and Enforcement Counsel. Other comments? Commissioner McBride?
Does this make it more difficult or add any time? Would the removal of this from the table, this being a bright line, creating a kind of a bright line, would this add time to the licensing process, the suitability review process, the background check process, any of that, in your estimation?
I can't think of an instance where it would change the analysis. I think, it actually may reduce the number of instances where a presumptive analysis would have to be undertaken and review mitigating factors that, without speaking to any individual case in the future, but just considering what our mitigating factors under the existing and proposed regulations are, and in instances where somebody has a criminal background, or I apologize, has a quaff on their record, but has successfully completed their probation term. That in and of itself is the sort of factual information we would consider as a mitigating factor. So perhaps we could consider how by not having that on the table, there's actually less of a burden, but I'm not sure how that would affect.
So the origins of my question are really if it doesn't have a negative impact on our ability to do our job, and if it isn't, if we're still able to make a suitability determination in the way that we have been able to, then I don't see any reason why we wouldn't take it out if that's the consensus. So that's kind of the point of the questions that I'm asking. Is it fair to say that it wouldn't have a negative?
Yes.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I already did. So I move to delete quaff for crimes of violence and fraud for the preceding 7 years as a presumptive negative suitability determination under tables B and D.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Second. I'll let the record show Commissioner Title made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. Is there anything else in dot 803? Great. And let us move on. Dot 820, confidentiality. Commissioner McBride? Oh, I'm sorry. I saw you hit your microphone. Dot 830, petitions for adoption, amendment, or repeal of regulations. Dot 840, non-conflict with other laws. Dot 850, waivers. Dot 860, notice. Okay, we are done with adult use. We'll get into...
No, actually, Mr. Chair, no, we're not.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, you're...
We have to
Yes,
go back.
I asked to defer until the end. Thank you very much, Commissioner McBride.
We have to go back and talk about-
.050?
And talk about fees for, well, we have to talk about fees for.
That's
delivery
right. Thank you
endorsement.
very much for those two. I've got both of them here. I just failed to check my notes. Let's do first in .050, which is marijuana establishments. Your point with respect to co-ops. I am feeling very generous right now, given that I really applaud the Commission for keeping focus on scope. So let's talk about, if you wouldn't mind just kind of reacquainting us with the issue that you raised, even though we were concerned it might be out of scope. I'm more than happy to.
So
Expand at this point.
the issue is whether the language should be modified such that it's not just if a member of the co-op has filed a Schedule F in the preceding 5 years, but also to include if a member of the co-op has a lease agreement with an individual or entity that has filed a Schedule F in the preceding 5 years.
Thank you. Is there any objection, first of all, to considering that? I'm willing to consider that. Is there any objection to that?
So I think that.
Go ahead, Commissioner Doyle. McBride. Go ahead, Commissioner McBride has the table. Go ahead.
So given as this is something that we haven't had a full conversation about, and I think that there may be some other conversations that need to occur to ensure that we're doing this in the right way and considering sort of all implications. I'm going to withdraw my motion
so
that we
you
gave at this point, but I would like to put it on for consideration.
I make the commitment that we'll do so, and as I said, we'll all have a chance to weigh in on that, because at the next meeting in October, we're going to have the full list, and all of us need to make sure that everything we want and believe needs to be on that list is on that list. So thank you, Commissioner McBride. The other remaining issue then is for delivery endorsement with respect to fees. Do you have a suggestion on that, Commissioner McBride?
I don't.
No. Okay. I have a suggestion, which is we are just not going to be able to vote on these regulations, on what we did. There's some drafting required. I think it is unrealistic and unfair to expect the legal staff to turn around that draft and have us in a position to both have time to digest the language and vote on it by tomorrow. So I think we're going to probably have to have a quick meeting next week just to finalize the vote on the regulations. I just don't think it's doable by tomorrow. If I could I ask the executive director to work with our chief financial and administrative officer to come up with a recommendation for fees for the delivery endorsement in that time frame?
Certainly that's possible. I do think we have a basis as well, that keeping in mind that the delivery only as well as the endorsement would be available for just social equity,
Yes.
economic empowerment, in that application fees are waived for that cohort, as well as the license fees being reduced by 50%.
But by 50% from what? So I understand that there would be no application fees, but what about license fees reduced by 50% from what?
Well, I think that's the discussion point, is being that whatever the decision is, it would be either cut in half or eliminated altogether.
But is it, I'd like, rather than just come up with an arbitrary number ourselves, ask for your input and recommendation on that one. At the time of final vote on, we can just include that as part of the final vote on regulations.
Sure.
Commissioner Tuttle?
I'm sorry, I'm not clear on why we would need to have a meeting next week.
Because I believe that some of the things that we decided today incorporate new language, and it's not ministerial, it's fundamental, and I believe that for us to have a vote to finalize the regulations, we need to allow our legal team to develop draft of the new language, to give the commission time to review that and to vote on that new language, and I just don't see how that can happen by tomorrow. And I'm not happy scheduling more meetings than are necessary, but I don't believe that we will be in a position to vote on. What we've done in the past is we've voted on regulations and approved them subject to ministerial changes that the legal team can make. I believe some of the language we've put in today is not ministerial. And I don't think it's going to be, General Counsel, if you'd like to disagree, but I don't think we're going to have time to have all the drafting done, and particularly time for the commission to digest it. General Counsel?
Let me suggest, Mr. Chairman, there have been specific instances where we've discussed delegations. I'm not concerned about any specific instances that have come up today. Right. That being said, I appreciate that the chair thinks that overall that there might be an opportunity here for commissioners to digest language, so I defer to the executive director and the chair in that regard. In terms of the drafting for tomorrow's meeting, I do not think that could be accomplished.
So I believe it's appropriate, and we obviously would like to get this done as soon as possible. I certainly share that objective. I don't want to rush, and I do think, as I said, there are subjects that came up today that we discussed and voted on, and we came up with, in some cases, draft language. In some cases, we did not finalize the drafting of the language, and I think there's work to be done, and I want that work to be done thoroughly by the legal, and I want by our legal staff, and I want each of the commissioners to have a chance to digest that before we vote. So I think we will, and we have already I've asked the chief of staff to work on a date. I believe we can have a quick, efficient meeting next week, but I think that's necessary. Anything else that I've missed before we move on to medical regulations? Okay. Thank you. When we get into medical regulations, I want to just mention one thing that the General Counsel has brought up to my attention, or not to my attention, but just remind me of. Some of the changes that we've just agreed to the draft regulations for adult use will have to be incorporated in the appropriate sections of the medical regulations. I don't think we need to, when we're going through the medical regulations, discuss those, because I think the legal team will do its job of making sure that the changes we made in adult use are reflected in the medical regulations. Is that accurate, General Counsel?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I'm happy to make sure that where applicable, I will make comparable changes in the medical use regulations.
Thank you. So let us move on to the medical regulations. We'll go through the exact same process, section by section. And I'm not going to presuppose any issues. I'm going to let commissioners raise issues in each section as appropriate. Sorry. Starting with dot zeros, and then again, I'm now referring to 935 CMR 501. I will not repeat that. It will just be the 3 digits after the decimal point. Starting with dot 001 purpose. Dot 002 definitions. Dot 005 fees. Dot 006 registration of certifying physicians. Dot 007 registration of certified nurse practitioners. Dot 008 registration of certifying physician assistants. Dot 010 written certification of a debilitating medical condition for a qualifying patient. Dot 015 temporary and annual registration of qualifying patients. Dot 020 temporary and annual registration of personal caregivers. Dot 021 registration of caregiving institutions. Dot 022 registration of institutional caregivers. .025, responsibilities of caregivers. .027, hardship cultivation registration. .029, registration of independent testing laboratory agents. .030, registration of medical marijuana treatment center agents. .031, denial of a registration card or hardship cultivation registration. .032, revocation of a registration card or hardship cultivation registration. .033, void registration cards. .034, revocation of a certifying healthcare provider registration. .035, void certifying physician registration. .050, medical marijuana treatment centers. .052, independent testing laboratories. .100, application for licensing of medical marijuana treatment centers. .101, application requirements. .102, action on applications. .103, licensure and renewal. .104, notification and approval of changes. .105, general operational requirements for medical marijuana treatment centers. Yes, Commissioner Flanagan?
At the appropriate time, I'd like to have the marketing and advertising requirements that we fulfill for the adult use to be also included in the medical regulations.
I'm sorry, just repeat that, I apologize.
The marketing and advertising requirements for the adult use side, I'd also like to be put into the medical side once we accomplish that.
Okay, fantastic, no problem. I think .105, general operational requirements for medical marijuana treatment centers. I appreciate your comment, Commissioner Flanagan. Any other comments on .105? Okay. .110, security requirements for medical marijuana treatment centers. .120, additional operational requirements for the cultivation, acquisition, and distribution of marijuana.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Doyle?
Sorry, my mic wasn't on.
Pardon, are we going back, or are we on 1.0?
120.
1.20?
Yep.
Okay.
This again, similar to, but slightly different than the change to the adult regulations regarding energy requirements for cultivators. Rather than the language that you see in the draft, if I could just read out loud, it's only minor changes, but also incorporates that extension provision.
Yes.
Okay. So rather than the language that you see in the existing draft, an MTC that is not co-located with a marijuana establishment shall have until January 1st, 2021 to demonstrate compliance with 935 CMR 501.120 subsection 11, period. An MTC subject to this section may apply for an additional 6-month extension if it agrees to install meters to monitor energy usage, water usage, and other data determined by the Commission, as well as provide reports on energy usage, water usage, waste production, and other data in a form and manner determined by the Commission.
Okay.
Period.
Any comments on that? Okay. Anything else in .120? Do we think we need? No motion. Do we need a motion on that, General Counsel?
I'm fine with that change.
Okay, fine, thank you. Anything else on dot 120? Okay. Dot 130, additional operational requirements for handling and testing marijuana and for production of MIPS. Dot 140, additional operational requirements for patient sales. Obviously, that we're going to use the same judgment with respect to this change on buffer zones, or that we're going to defer buffer zones until the next round. That's going to, so it'll come out of the medical regulations as well. Okay, anything else on dot 140, additional operational requirements for patient sales? Okay. Dot 145, home delivery. Commissioner McBride? No, okay. Dot 150, edible marijuana products. Dot 160, testing of marijuana and marijuana products. Dot 170, municipal requirements. Dot 200, counties of Dukes County and Nantucket. Dot 300, complaints process. Dot 301, inspections and compliance. Dot 302, compliance examination. Dot 303, unannounced purchase for the purpose of investigative testing, i.e. the secret shopper program. Dot 310, deficiency statements. Dot 320, plans of correction. Dot 321, administrative hold. Dot 330, limitation of sales. Dot 335, removal and prohibition of marijuana and marijuana products. Dot 340, quarantine order. Dot 350, cease and desist order and summary suspension order. Dot 360, fines. Dot 370, orders to show cause. Dot 400, medical marijuana treatment center license, grounds for denial of application and licensure. Dot 415, void medical marijuana treatment center license. Dot 450, medical marijuana treatment center registration or license, grounds for suspension, revocation, and denial of renewal applications. .500, hearings and appeals of actions on registration of or licenses. .800, background check suitability standard for licensure and registration. .801, suitability standard for licensure. .802, suitability standard for registration as a medical marijuana treatment center agent. .803, suitability standard for registration as a laboratory agent. .820, confidentiality. .830, petitions for the adoption, amendment, or repeal of regulations. .840, non-conflict with other law. .850, waivers. .860, notice. .900, severability. That is it, unless anybody, I missed anything, or anybody wants to go back to one of the sections we already spoke to. Commissioner Title?
If we could go back to definitions, please.
Sure.
Under removal,
I'm sorry?
removal. Removal of product. Removal of product means an order issued against an MTC to remove and prohibit sales of categories of products, product types, specific product types, or specific brands of products after notice and on determination that the marijuana or marijuana product poses a risk. I believe that should be substantial risk. I think it may just be a typo.
General Counsel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was some language in the draft adult use regulations where the standard has been substantial. In this particular round of regulatory change, there was a proposal to narrow that standard. So I would just suggest that the Commission vote on the standard it wants to establish, and I will integrate that accordingly into both sets of the regulations. So I think the options on the table, Commissioner Title, are substantial or imminent. I also would defer to licensing and enforcement in terms of, as an enforcement tool, their perspective on the difference between those two.
Do you have any comments, enforcement staff? And the issue is either say risk, say substantial risk, or say imminent risk. I believe those are.
Sorry, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, I think this is ultimately a policy matter for the Commission to consider. I think from our standpoint, it's a tool that would likely rarely be used. However, depending on the circumstances, having some directive from the Commission would be valuable for us.
Fine. So I'll then ask, unless there are comments, I'll ask Commissioner Tyler, would you make a motion?
Yes. And I'm just checking to see what it is in the other draft, because I'm going to make a motion to make it the same. Okay, so that's substantial. So I move to change the definition of removal of product under 935 CMR 501 to be the same as 935 CMR 500, which would be substantial risk.
Okay. Thank you. Can I have a second, please? Second. Let's make sure that Commissioner Title made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor?
Aye.
I'll let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you, Commissioner Title. Is there anything else in the adult use, in the medical regulations? 935 CMR 501. No? Okay, so You are going to, General Counsel, ensure, as I said earlier, that all the changes that we made with respect to 935 CMR 500 will be incorporated appropriately within CMR or 935 CMR 501. And I will therefore suggest, and I am not oblivious to sign and body language of my fellow commissioners. I still believe it is necessary we have this meeting next week, and because there will be some subsequent changes to the medical regulations based upon decisions we made for adult use, I'm going to defer voting on both 935 CMR 500 and 935 CMR 501 until our meeting next week. Again, I think it's appropriate and necessary to give staff time and then to give commission time to digest the staff work on some substantive changes we made today. I expect that we will be able to have a quick and efficient meeting and at a time to be determined. I don't know, Chief of Staff, have we got a date scheduled yet that works for all the commission?
We discussed not next week, but the 24th.
Okay. Well, let's we'll figure out the time, but I think that's appropriate, and I realize it's not a popular decision, but I believe it's the appropriate and necessary decision. That said, I think we can conclude for today item 3A, final regulations, unless I am more than happy if we missed anything, even if we closed it, if something has come up. If not, then I'm going to suggest that we move on to the next agenda item, which is a policy proposal with respect to expedition. Commissioner Doyle, would you mind taking the lead on this, please?
Not at all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. We heard considerable feedback throughout the recent regulatory process requesting that we add priority status to applicants that aren't designated as priority applicants in the statute, which I think is probably likely beyond what we're able to do. But within the remaining pool of applicants, the general pool of applicants, I request that the Commission vote to adopt a policy of expediting review of applications for groups that the legislature has directed us to promote, namely farmers, small businesses, and communities impacted by the war on drugs. To be more precise, I request that the Commission licensing team expedite review of pending applications for social equity participants, outdoor cultivators, coop cooperatives, and micro businesses. And I would further suggest that, consistent with a vote taken by the Commission in 2018, in the interest of public health and safety, review of applications for independent testing laboratories also be expedited. I further propose that the policy sunset on December 31st, 2020, and during its effectiveness, the Commission team collect data regarding its impact to the licensing process and present a recommendation to the Commission in December 2020 as to whether the expedition policy should be extended.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Doyle. I really appreciate you raising this issue, giving it some thought. Can I have comments on this from the other commissioners? I would also welcome comments from our licensing staff and our executive director about any challenges they can see with respect to implementation if we go forward. But let me start with comments or questions from other commissioners. Commissioner McBride.
I just want to state my appreciation to Commissioner Doyle for taking the lead on this and putting this together. I think that, you know, in some terms, this doesn't go as far as I think many of us on the Commission would like to go with regard to expediting some particular groups, but I also understand that, you know, there are some potential hurdles to that legally, as well as practically speaking, that we do have general applicants in the queue that have been in the queue and are waiting their turn. And so I think this really is an attempt, and I think it's a laudable attempt to try to get us further along and to appreciate all of the issues that we're dealing with and the, you know, multiple pressures that we are dealing with to do this efficiently and well, as we have, you know, since our inception. So I appreciate Commissioner Doyle in doing this.
Other comments or questions? Commissioner Title?
I have a friendly amendment, but first I just want to really commend, I'm doing a lot of commending today, but I really want to commend Commissioner Doyle. It takes into account a lot of the public feedback that we heard, and I think that this shows the people who took the time to submit comment that you were heard. And just for Commissioner Doyle to move away from maybe we can't do this or we can't do that, but move to what can we do, that type of energy is so noticed and appreciated and encouraged, and what we all need to be doing more of. So with that said, I have a friendly amendment to add to the list, the bulleted list of pending applications that would be expedited: minority business enterprises, women business enterprises, and veteran business enterprises, because those groups were specifically mentioned in Chapter 55. And in Chapter 55, they are defined as defined by General Laws, Chapter 7, Section 58. So I would suggest that we define them that same way. And that would then include all of the groups that are mentioned in Chapter 55 as groups to promote or encourage or include.
Thank you. Any other comments? And first of all, I'll, as usual, jump on the bandwagon and thank. I already thank you. I'll thank you again.
I was going to say, I think I'm been thanked enough. Thank you.
So then, can I ask, please, for a motion, Commissioner Doyle, including the, if you're comfortable with the friendly amendment proposed by Commissioner Title?
Can I just, I'm sorry, I just
Okay.
had one late question.
Yeah, sure,
So,
no.
I apologize if this is forcing Commissioner Title to repeat what she just said. So the definition of what would qualify is set forth in the statute.
Yes.
Okay. So we are, practically speaking, what would those business enterprises have to do? What are we looking for there as to qualify them for this expedited process?
I would be most comfortable just pulling that up, but in layman's terms, it would be getting certified as a minority-owned or women-owned or veteran-owned business by the Supplier Diversity Office.
Do we have any sense of what that, I'm just trying to kind of get out there for public consumption, what that process would look like? Does anybody have any sense of what that looks like?
It's a fairly involved process, I think. I think there's some similarities to our ownership and control investigation to make sure that it's owned by who the company is saying they're owned by.
So this would be, in practical terms, this would be a fairly constrained pool, potentially. Someone who's gone through that process, it would be, where it's not going to be a huge pool, but probably a smaller pool of people that we're talking about.
I would say so.
Thank you.
Then again, can I, any other last-minute questions? Then can I ask Commissioner Doyle, would you make a motion including Commissioner Title's friendly amendment?
Yes, I move to expedite the applicants from the general pool as I described, with the additional amendment offered by Commissioner Title.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Second. Let the record show Commissioner Doyle made the motion, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the recommendation. Should we all, one more time, thank Commissioner Doyle? I don't think she's been thanked enough during this meeting.
Actually, I think I'm on next, too.
You are on next. And what I'm going to suggest, Mr. Executive, I don't know where our research team is. I don't see them. Are they there? Oh, hi. Okay. Well, we're going to go through one more agenda item, which I think will be a relatively quick one. We're going to then take a break, and then you guys are going to be on, so get ready. Commissioner Doyle, back to you.
I apologize for dominating the meeting. I move that the commission authorize the commission staff to review any proposed amendments to the Massachusetts Comprehensive Fire Safety Code, 527 CMR 1.00, posted by the Board of Fire Prevention Services regarding cannabis cultivation, processing, and extraction, as well as any future amendments that may be posted and considered by the Board of Building Regulations and Standards regarding the same subject matter, and provide written comment or participate in public hearings as needed if the executive director, in consultation with the staff, determines there is a potential conflict with Cannabis Control Commission regulations, clarification is needed to ensure consistency between the agency's regulations, or otherwise determines that comment or participation is necessary to further the objectives of the Cannabis Control Commission.
Can I have any comments or questions on that? Commissioner McBride?
I cannot overstate how much I support this. I think that it's really important where there are so many sets of regulations at the state level that we are trying to be as consistent as possible when there are things that implicate, regulations that implicate the work that we do, and making sure that we're advocating for consistency and for collaboration as much as possible with other agencies. And this is one example of that. So I strongly support this.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, great. Then would you please formally make that motion, Commissioner Doyle?
I did.
You made the motion, fine. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Doyle made the motion, seconded by Commissioner McBride. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the motion. Thank you very much. So let's take a 10-minute break. We will get back into our next agenda item, which is the research report on youth licensure review. And I'm looking forward to this. It's a very important topic. During the break, I will consult with the executive